Mr. Ambassador Chris Wood, and thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to meet us. Today we're very glad and very honored to be here, and I lead a bunch of students to meet you and to talk about the very interesting but a little difficult issue we call the Brexit. Would you like to introduce the topic Brexit to all of the students here?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm delighted to welcome you to my office this morning. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the interest that you're showing in this complicated issue,
yes.
As you talked about it. The background is that at our last general election in 2015, so a little over a year ago, May 2015, the Conservative Party included in their manifesto, their programme, if they would be elected, a commitment to look to renegotiate the terms of the UK's membership of the European Union, and in the light of that discussion then to hold a referendum on the UK's membership of the European Union. So through 2015 and into the first part of this year, the Prime Minister and other ministers were engaged in discussions with the European Commission, the European Council, the other member states, and agreed some changes in the way that the UK's membership of the European Union would operate. With that negotiation concluded, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, then made the announcement that we would, on the 23rd of June, have a referendum on the basis of the negotiations that he had had. He felt that that gave us a stronger and better position in Europe. But as we now know, on the 23rd of June, the British people took a different view, yes. And the population voted to leave the European Union. So Brexit is a shorthand for Britain's exit from the European Union. But we had the referendum, and now we have to follow through the way in which the people voted.
Yeah, thank you for a very detailed explanation. I think the students here would benefit from your explanation. And I think this is a big issue, and there are always the two sides of the campaign, leave and remain. And this is called a very, very great sensation to a lot of us. It's not only seismic, also cosmic. It's really, really huge influence upon all of the world. And the students, as a English teacher, and I've been always asked about these questions. And here I am, and I've been always knowing that you have devoted so much in Taiwan's relationship with the UK, and educationally, economically, and politically. So I think this interview would have established a very gigantic step toward the relationship between the UK and the Taiwan education. So thus, I'm inviting all the students to ask some of the questions. I think it's not really too critical, and I hope that you can really give a lot of an explanation, and also the very, very spirit and soul of the Brexit to all of the students. So we started from the first student, Fortuna, and probably we have a very, very insightful questions for our ambassador.
Hello, I'm Fortuna. I'm from Yongchun Senior High School, and I have a few questions for representative. Sure. So the Brexit vote leave has ignited call for the second Scottish independence referendum. So how does the British government react to this, and do you think that the UK, the Brexit, is the first domino in the collapse of the EU?
Well, first of all, the referendum is a national referendum across the whole of the UK, and the vote is calculated, the outcome is calculated across the whole of the UK. And overall, a majority voted to leave. So, yes, in certain parts of the UK, there was a Remain vote in the majority, but a referendum is a national event, and that takes, so we have to take account of that on a national basis. The Prime Minister has made clear that her negotiations going forward with the EU and with the EU member states will only be done on the basis of discussions and conversations with all the constituent parts of the United Kingdom. So she has been very early, since she came into office, to Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland to talk to their leaders. And there will be ongoing discussions with all of them to help shape the UK's negotiating position in these discussions. So I think it is premature to be talking about how the outcome of negotiations, which we don't yet know what will be in those negotiations. So I don't think we can be talking yet about what the impact of an outcome will be when we don't know yet what the negotiations how they will shape up. And as for your second question about the rest of the European Union, I think it is not for me to comment on what might happen for other member states. However, what is clear is that the European Union, over the half century and more since it was founded, has helped preserve peace and stability in Europe. It has contributed massively to economic growth, and particularly as we have seen the geopolitical changes of Eastern Europe since the 1990s, I think the European Union has been a strong force for good.
And Representative Mr. Wood, we've heard that you're appointed to be the ambassador of the UK in Beijing. Could you verify?
That's not the correct position. I'm actually moving into the European Foreign Service, it's called the European External Action Service, to be deputy head of the European Union delegation to China and Mongolia. So I will be moving to Beijing in a few weeks' time.
So, from the Stability and Growth Pact and the Europe Fiscal Pact to the austerity plan, many of which made to tackle the European debt crisis, have caused damage to the EU's finance and economy. So, they are all proposals to reduce the deficit strongly backed by Germany. And with the anti-immigration, anti-refugee, and the right-wing proclamation, do you think that, I'm wondering if an anti-Germanism or nationalism is on the rise after the EU referendum. What is your belief in this regard?
I don't see that at all. I think that clearly Europe, not only Europe, faces a big challenge with the migration crisis, with many immigrants wanting to escape from areas of conflict, like in Syria, other areas of the Middle East, Africa. And over the last 2 or 3 years, we have seen big flows of migrants. But I think the EU has been working together very hard to try to find solutions to this. These are not easy issues to resolve. The key thing is to find ways of resolving them at the source, so that where in countries social and economic conditions are very bad, we can try to help improve those. We can try to help grow the economy of some of these places where migrants are moving from. And in the case of Syria, obviously this has been a very tragic situation now for quite some time, but the EU is working with other international partners to try to find a solution to that terrible conflict. And I don't think that fundamentally there is any, yes, there are mixed opinions about migration, but I think the fundamental approach of European countries, including the UK, including Germany, is to be open to genuine refugees and to want to try to help them. That I think that is accepted by most people. Of course, some people take a different view. That is one aspect of the difficulties that the EU is currently facing. You talked also about the debt crisis and other issues. These are long-term issues, but I think the EU working collectively has made good progress in trying to deal with those issues, and economies within Europe are still not growing strongly, but there is growth across the EU as a whole, and that can only be a positive.